So I'm back from the auto parts store. So the first thing I do is get the pilot bearing out of there. So it's right in here. First I'm going to try the grease method. So I'm going to pack some grease in there. Kind of messy, but it's worked before. Then I just took the little alignment tool that comes with the kit and I cut the ring off the back. And I'll pound that in there. Looks like the bearing is falling apart, so this might not work. See if we can clean this off and see what's going on. Feels like the oils or the grease is just going through the bearing. I'll have to get out the puller. I have this puller. We'll see if it'll work on this bearing. If you use a 17mm 12-sided socket, you can loosen the flywheel bolts and take them out. Then you can pull the flywheel off, and the bearing is accessible from the back side as well. So then I'll just find a socket that is a similar size here, like that. And there, came right out that time. So if you can see in here, there's a little lip, a retaining lip, so that the bearing only goes in a certain distance. So put the bearing in from the back side of the flywheel. Make sure when you pound on it you have something that matches up with the outer race of the bearing so that it doesn't destroy the I guess I didn't finish that, so it doesn't destroy the bearing. So now I got the bearing back in there, and it's pulled up against the flange that kept me from getting it out before. So now I get to put all those screws back in. I'll put this back on with that hole lined up with the other hole there, like it was originally. Have the flywheel back up in there with the new pilot bearing. We want to use some brake cleaner of some sort or something else that doesn't leave a residue, and clean all the grease and grime off of the flywheel. And now we're ready to install the new clutch. So make sure you look on it and see which side says flywheel side, and put that side toward the flywheel. There we go. So it only goes on in one direction. Now we gotta put all the flywheel bolts back in. The pressure plate bolts back in. Whenever you're putting these in, you want to make sure you go in a star pattern or something so that the pressure plate pulls down evenly instead of cranking it all the way down on one side first and then it gets it a little crooked in there, or can. So again, this is a 10mm 12-sided. There we go. Now we got all those tightened up. Make sure you remember to take the alignment tool out before you put the transmission back up in there. We got to put the new throwout bearing in. I put a little bit of grease on the knob so that it stays lubricated a little. So the bearing race goes outward. There we have it. So now the trick is to get the splines lined up with the splines in the transmission, in the engine.
You need the doohickey.
Luckily this transmission is somewhat light, so I'll be able to wiggle it around as long as I don't drop it. So this is the fill bolt, so we take that out and fill it. Make sure everything is out of the way up above so you don't get things caught between the transmission and the engine. Doesn't make you feel too good when you have to take it all back apart because you got a wire stuck in there. Now you got the bolts back in. When I'm putting the first couple back in, I like to do them by hand, just to make it sure it tightens up smoothly. There, looks like we got these two in good and tight. Now we can put the axle back in. So it has a snap ring on the end like this, so you want to make sure that that goes all the way in. You don't want to pound on here.
Point to the snap ring again.
Here's the snap ring.
Okay.
So that has to seat into the differential. You don't want to pound on the boot, because then you'll end up with a busted boot like we got out here. So what you want to do is kind of use the weight of the caliper to slide the axle in and seat the over the clip. Make sure the gears are splined before you do it, or it won't go in. Right now I got both my axles seated, so I can put my control arm back together. Make sure you put the cotter pin back in and bend it over so that the nut doesn't come loose. There we go, we're all done. No, I'm just kidding. Try to put the mounts all back on. Get the socket on here so I can push it up there with the socket. Since I can't get my hands in there. Make sure you put all the right bolts back in the right places. So I'll use the jack to push the transmission up a little since it dropped down a little after we took the mounts out before. There we go. Before we tighten these down, we'll put those two back ones in to make sure that it lines up.
Want me to shine a flashlight up there?
Do you have one?
Nope.
I got it. So with the jack, I was able to jimmy it around a little bit to get those two bolts started.
It's not plugged in. Oh, there it is.
So now we gotta tighten up those bolts. So I put the axle back in so the impact rings won't fit. Okay, now I gotta put that little cotter pin back in for the shifter. Boot back on here. This seems to be better. There. And the rod comes back up. Like that. Make sure the holes lined up somewhat. Looks like it'll be easier with some pliers to hold the There we go, now it's going in, I think. There we go. Don't forget to put the little clip back on with the little dimple in there, into the cotter pin. Like that, and pull the boot back over it.
See, that's just all dark.
Sorry.
You need a flashlight or a light on the camera.
Yeah. There we go. Now I take this bolt back out. What if you came from over here? Put the control rod back in. This is a 12mm. Got the slave cylinder down. Put the boot on. sure you get it in the groove all the way around. Put the slave cylinder in, making sure that the rod goes into the end of the housing.
Did you say hosing?
Said housing?
Oh, housing. Sorry.
And get the two 12mm bolts. Put them back in. Make sure they're good and tight. Now we gotta put the dust cover back on. You know, some of the oil. Remember, this was a 10mm and a 12mm bolt. And we gotta put the two braces on. Three bolts in each. The front one gets the two bolts that are the same size over here, and the larger one and a bigger one here. And 14mm. The back one has a longer bolt, so it gets three different size bolts. Two 12mm and one 14mm. like for down here, we just have the exhaust manifold to put back on. It appears there was no gasket on here. I'll have to get a new gasket. Oh, I forgot to put that on. Drop the bolt.
Right
Or the
there.
nut. Oh, there's the nut. There's the washer. The washer right over here. When you put this up, make sure you get it on this little bracket back here. These are two 12mm nuts. So for the front one, it has the two 17mm nuts and the 14mm bolt. Don't know if that's the same on everybody's, but I doubt it.
Okay, good night. No,
Now for the two
we'll want
spring
back
nuts.
in the house.
Exhaust pipe.
What?
The two spring nuts for the exhaust pipe connection. For these, I need the 12mm socket and the 14mm end wrench. sure that the bolt flange goes up tight against the exhaust flange so that the spring is doing all the work. So I think we got everything from the bottom, so it's time to go up to the top of it. Let's loosen the fill bolt. Appears we have to use a end wrench for that. $17mm end wrench.
And you're loosening the fill bolt.
Yeah. It's a 17mm socket with an extension on it. That one works. We'll be able to get to that from up above, but I just wanted to loosen it down here where it was easier. Go. Okay, so since we're all done with the mounts, first thing we'll do is take off the spreader bar. You're going to put the mount back on. So you want to make sure it's lined up on the two bolts so that you know it's in place.
Oh, sorry, I should be watching this.
And you put in the right bolt. A little bit of a challenge getting that bolt and the nut down in there. And the bolt for here. Those are 17mm.
You're trying to trip me.
Yep. 17mm socket. Woo! I find my long one. Oh, found it. Now I can tighten these up a little better. This bolt goes in the back of the motor mount over here.
Where?
Right down here. That one's a 19mm.
Sorry.
Oops, wrong way. Maybe it's almost there.
That was the really, really long one. Right?
Yeah.
Says the battery is dying.
Battery's dying. Okay. Now I want to hook up the electrical wires. That's the starter. That's the starter. That's over there. Let's put on the wire though. Okay, I didn't get it stuck in the transmission. Oh, there it is. Put that on right there. The speedometer cable goes right there. Clicks down. You gotta put the upper bell housing bolts on. Those are right here. There's 3 of them. Do you want me to go get the battery charger?
No. I mean, if it dies, yeah.
Now we can put this cable back together and slide it back on here. And this one can, oh, that one's broken. Let's put that back on. Oh, first, the last bell housing bolt back in the hole back here. Get the dust bunnies out of it. Oh wait, before we do that, let's put this little bracket back on for the clutch cable. That's it. 12mm, if I remember correct. And I gotta put the little retaining clip in that I took out without needing to. If I can see which way to go. A little bit of a hammer to make sure it's down in there. Now we'll get to a starter. Two starter bolts, the short one was on top, and the really long one was on the bottom.
Not sure what I was looking at there.
We just get the top one most of the way in so we can make sure the bottom one starts. Feels like it started. Now tighten the top one the rest of the way. Put the little ground strap back on. That one's a 10mm. That over here. And then put the little the push-in starter cable on. Make sure the boot goes around properly to seal it. Then put the 12mm. Clip these clips back on to hold the wires in place. Okay. Airbox screws. That looks like we're ready to put some oil in it. So the owner's manual says to use genuine Honda ATF, but since we don't have a Honda dealer in town and I need to get this project done by tonight so we can drive the car on Monday, I have to use the temporary fix that it says to use 10W30 motor oil. And since I have to replace that boot in the future, I didn't want to spend a bunch of money on the Honda fluid, and I can just use cheap motor oil for the time being. It takes 2 quarts and you fill it up until it starts dripping out of the fill tube below. Make sure you have a little bucket under there to catch it.
Do you have a bucket under there?
Nope. I'll put one though.
Oh, that's a great idea. Do you want me to hold that?
Okay.
You got it?
Thank you. So it works best to have a funnel with a rubber tube on it so you can get it down into the fill hole. I've heard that you can also take out the speedometer and fill it through there. I'll probably turn it off for this. It takes a while. So here I'm tightening up the bolt for the oil fill. Now I gotta put the dust shroud on. It's got all the nuts and bolts over here.
gonna use our little clip with the screw that goes in it.
This side has a second piece in here. Over on this side, we got the clips with nuts. Right up in the window well there. And I gotta tighten these three. Then I'll let it down a little so I can put the waders on. So I found the tuner socket, so now I can snug up the wheels. Go to the other side. Now I'll let the car down the rest of the way. So I'll put the battery cable on now. The negative battery terminal back on. Get the 10mm in there. Make sure it's down all the way and tighten it up. And I think the last thing to do is put the air box back in. It's right there. That piece. This piece on first. Tighten up the clamp. Put the connectors back on and then put the hoses in. Gotta get that rubber grommet off down there that I didn't get before. So the rubber grommet goes in here. And that pushes back down. Below. There we go. And then the two bolts go in up top. With a 10mm wrench. That was actually a socket, but I'll be doing a tune-up on this car, so I have a new air filter to put in. But I'll put this one back in for now. Alright. So we gotta make sure we torque the lug nuts. I loaned out my new torque wrench, so I'm stuck using the old one. I like going to 90 foot-pounds. And then do the other side. So now we'll close her up. No screws laying anywhere. Start her up and give it a test. Looks like it was good. There weren't any shudders or strange noises or anything, and I'll call it a night. So to quickly recap, we had a 97 Honda Civic and the clutch started not disengaging completely, so it was hard to get it in gear, or it wouldn't even disengage the clutch, so you couldn't start the car with the clutch in. So I started inspecting things and found that the clutch master cylinder and slave cylinder appeared to be working correctly, so I decided it was time to take the transmission out. Whenever we took the transmission out and took the clutch apart, we found that there were little pieces of metal that were broken out of the spring areas. So these little pieces of metal were grabbing and causing the clutch to not disengage, and the broken springs were causing a shudder in the system. Now we're back up and running, so we're going to take it on a test drive. Try not to hit anything on the way out. Feels pretty good so far. Yeah. So it was a success. The clutch works like a charm. And we can let my daughter have her car back.